Hi, everybody. This is Bill Arnold, Executive Director of Blue Diamond Recreation, and this is Chapter 4 of my War Journal. Before I begin, I want to make sure everybody understands that the experiences that I'm reading are my experiences. Every veteran, anyone who served in a combat situation is going to have very unique circumstances. This just happens to be mine. And what I hope to do is help you, the viewer, understand one person's perspective. That's all. Chapter 4, August 2004. I spent the early morning of August 5th writing a few letters before we transitioned to our final extensive field training exercise and then block leave. Debbie and the kids were at Moe Ranch in Hunt, Texas with Debbie and Bob Schofield, and I learned that Taylor and Robert were heading to Comfort, Texas with my brother Charles, his son Will, and daughter Mary Madison for a work weekend in preparation for deer season. It was on this day that I had a true epiphany. I finally realized that in an odd way, I was lucky to endure this deployment because without it, I would not have fully appreciated what I have. I have a great family, wonderfully supportive parents and in-laws, and above all, a loving wife and spectacularly caring and sweet children. I think I always knew this, but we all need reminding from time to time. And I am immensely fortunate to have such an intelligent, capable, and beautiful wife. On August 6th, we moved to Range 101 Alpha in order to conduct M16, M249, and 9mm pistol qualification. I was pleased that I shot very well, as did all the scouts. I then drove to the range scheduling office to ensure that all the ranges and training areas were confirmed. Once I returned to the platoon, I pulled Shin aside and informed him that we needed a much greater level of supervision. He assured me 3 times that he would do a better job, and I committed myself to doing a better job as well. After my visit with Shin, I telephoned Debbie. She was driving back from Moe Ranch and said they were passing through Granbury on their way back to Fort Worth. She told me that the children had bought me a Chick-A-Stick at the gas station and planned to mail it to me when they got home. Sweet Allie spoke to me on the phone, and I could hear Debbie in the background telling her what to say. This made me laugh, though after hanging up with them, I stepped behind my truck and cried a little bit because I missed my family so much. This would not be the last time my emotions came to the surface, but I never cried in front of the scouts. It would have shown a weakness that likely would have undermined my credibility as a leader. August 8th and 9th were extremely busy. The weather taxed everyone, and each day the temperature reached 90 degrees by 8 a.m. and peaked at over 110 degrees. While shooting our M250 caliber machine guns, one blew up, a cook-off with the feed tray open. Despite a broken feed claw and cracked bolt face, no one was injured, thankfully. We then drove to another range to fire AT-4 anti-tank rockets and to throw fragmentation grenades. I sent Lance Corporal Chris Jeans back to the barracks, suffering from heat exhaustion, and Lance Corporal Tim Dallas went to the aid station with a severe burn on his neck due to an ejected round lodged inside the collar of his flak jacket. The hot brass stuck to his neck and sizzled for about 3 seconds before he could remove it. On the morning of August the 11th, I rolled out of my sleeping bag at 5:30 a.m. and enjoyed a hot cup of coffee as the sun rose in the east. A hot cup of coffee, alone. It was perhaps my most enjoyable event, especially in the desert when the mornings and evenings seemed to be the only tolerable times. My morning coffee also gave me the opportunity to experience a bit of quiet and to consider larger questions. I thought deeply about why I gave up my comfortable life in Fort Worth for this deployment. And there were many times when I regretted doing so. After all, I was a volunteer. I suppose I rejoined the Marines for 5 main reasons. First, I believed it was the right thing to do under the circumstances. I believe that all Americans should take an inventory of their skills and abilities and consider ways that they can contribute to the greater good. After the terror attacks of September 11th, 2001, I figured that my skill set meant that I needed to serve. Second, I believe that if my father was faced with the same decision, he would have done the same thing. Of course, I cannot be certain of this, but after all, he did enlist in the U.S. Navy in 1944 when the United States had already sustained tremendous casualties and the war was still in doubt. I believe my dad was a very brave man. Third, I worry about my own legacy. I want to be remembered as a man of principle, someone who believed in and taught a certain set of ideals and followed through on them. Teachers like me often theorize about ways to improve the world, but rarely do anything about it. I've tried to teach my students that we need women and men of action, and I wanted to be recognized as such. Fourth, I did and still do feel energized and alive when I'm around other Marines. I enjoy the hardships of field life, not the hardship per se, but the pride I feel when it ends. This pride cannot be acquired except through experience. Simply put, I enjoy feeling tough and resilient. Finally, I want my children to speak admiringly of me when I'm gone. I always admired my dad's service. As I drank the coffee, I remember that I had great faith that my deployment would strengthen the bond that we as a family have together. I know that my love and appreciation for them has grown tremendously since I left them on July the 5th. August the 14th found us in the Lead Mountain training area. Midway through 2nd Section's rifle training, a tremendous storm blew through. Dark clouds, rain, and terrible thunder. The sky turned black. Something weird is about to happen, I told Lance Corporal Ben Bias, and it did. When one of our trucks launched a tow missile, lightning struck the guide wire as it traveled downrange. The lightning hit midway between the launch tube and the missile. The electric current went back up the wire and fried the missile guidance system, causing the missile to tumble to the ground about 500 yards from our position. Throughout the day, we had 5 other erratic or tumbling missiles. We also had 1 dud and 1 missile hang fire in the tube. The explosive ordnance disposal technician said that he had never seen so much weirdness in his 20 years in the Marine Corps. After we moved back to the base, I bought pizza and sodas for the Marines and spent $192. It was well worth it, and they appreciated the food and drink as well as the fact that I'd thought of them. The vendor at the base, Circle K, loved me and my credit card. On August the 17th, we drew our maps of Iraq and began intense training on what we might find once we arrived in Fallujah. I'd never seen a map of the Baghdad-Ramadi corridor, and it gave me a chance to orient myself. I was surprised by what I saw. The areas north and south of the Euphrates River were crisscrossed by canals and impassable farmland. It was at this time that we got a better sense of what and who we would face in Iraq. In addition to the very difficult terrain, we learned of the tactics the enemy might employ against us. Based on the reporting since the summer of 2003, Marine intelligence officers at 29 Palms were able to prepare us well. Insurgent forces in Fallujah targeted U.S. forces in firefights, ambushes in parallel with the detonation of improvised explosive devices, as well as suicide bombs and vehicle-borne suicide detonations. Insurgent hunter-killer teams tended to be small. One man conducting reconnaissance, one setting off the IED, and 2 to 4 men firing on the convoy or Marine patrol. Later on, and at the time we arrived, the insurgents were able to stage more elaborate attacks involving up to 12 men, many of them wielding rocket-propelled grenades. The vehicle-borne suicide bombings were the most insidious, though they were relatively rare. The reason for this is that U.S. convoys are simply not easy to approach. Iraqi civilian vehicles tend to move aside when they saw us speeding down the roads. We earned a much-needed leave, and I traveled home from 29 Palms to Fort Worth, where I spent 10 days, August 20th to 30th. What I'm going to do now is read verbatim from the notes that I took in my journal. So please forgive the fact that they are a bit scrawled. I'm starting the final leg home from leave. I'll be there 9 days before we head back for final training and departure to Iraq. The last 6 days seem to have dragged on and on. We accomplished a lot, however. I cannot describe how excited I am to be going home for a few days. I telephoned home this morning and spoke to the kids. Allie assured me she would stay awake until 10:30 p.m. to greet me at arrival. I can't wait. Now, this is the August 29th journal entry, which was written while I was aboard American West flight bound for Phoenix from DFW. Just a few hours ago, I left our house. Debbie, Taylor, Robert, and Allie, and Charles took me to the airport. It was a painful goodbye. I cried harder than I had ever cried. I cried for my family. I cried for myself because I'm afraid. I'm afraid of what lies ahead, scared because of the eventuality they may be unprepared for duty, and I'm sad because I don't want to be away from my family. Leave was great. We spent each day doing fun things. The evening of August 20th, the entire family picked me up at the airport and drove me home. It felt great, almost as though I had not been gone. We all agreed that 2 months went by quickly due to the fact that we were all so busy. The greatest change had taken place in Allie. She was growing so much. She had gained such confidence in herself due to her swim lessons and zoo camps, and most noticeable was her increased vocabulary. She was speaking in full, articulate sentences. Robert was tan, handsome, fit from gymnastics, and clingy while I was at home. He will always hold a very special place in my heart, perhaps because he reminds me so much of my dad. He's kind, has a great sense of humor, and extremely interested in all that he does. Taylor, my sweet, young, considerate man. He had grown what seemed like 6 inches and wore a size 11 shoe. I was surprised to see how mature and handsome he had become. I know that he will continue to grow and mature, and I look forward to getting home to help him through the turbulent years of middle school. Debbie looked more beautiful than ever. I'm so happy and fortunate that our marriage is so strong and that it has always gotten stronger over time. She and I hardly left each other's side. I suppose that's the way marriage is supposed to be. A brief chronology of my leave period. Saturday, home and dinner at Mi Casino with Charles and Mom. Sunday, a run with John O'Reilly, then Six Flags over Texas with John and our family. Monday, quick trip to the Diamond A Ranch, then dinner with Denny, Carol, Jeff, and Laura and my family. Wednesday, first day of school for the kids, then Robert went back to gymnastics. Thursday, I spoke to the students at Country Day, then had lunch with Scott Kloglazier at Carshawn's Deli, then dinner with Debbie at St. Emilion's restaurant. Friday, went to the Rangers game with the kids while they played hooky from school. Saturday, we went bowling and had dinner with Catherine, Charles, Will, Mary Madison, Mom, and Nanny. Sunday, leave ended. I departed for the airport. Sadness. I got a lot done while I was on leave. I especially enjoyed speaking to the upper school on Thursday. I explained to them that I wanted their support and that in return I would try to provide them regular updates from Iraq. Debbie seems to be taking the deployment with great difficulty. I think she felt okay while I was in California, but Iraq is different, mainly because of the unpredictability of events and the threat over there. I'm sad that I have brought this pain to someone so sweet and someone so gentle. She doesn't really deserve this. My mother is also having a difficult time. I can tell she does not quite know what to think. She is such a great provider. She always provides nourishment and a safe, fun place to be. My grandmother, Nanny, is conscious of what is going on. Last night she said, "Take care over there. God protects us wherever we are." She is such a dear lady, and I hope she'll be okay while I'm away. On a side note, my grandmother, Juanita Parnell, whom we all affectionately called Nanny, died peacefully on June the 3rd, 2006, at the age of 93, and I was with her when she passed. There were some special events that I would miss while I was away. I would miss Taylor's birthday on October 2nd. I would miss Charles's birthday on October 12th, Debbie's birthday on November 3rd. I would miss Thanksgiving, Allie's birthday on December 22nd. I'd miss Christmas, Mom's birthday on January 31st, and Nanny's birthday on March the 11th. That ends chapter 4. When we return next, we'll make our transition to Iraq. Thank you all for listening, and thank you again for your support of Blue Diamond Recreation.